signal now for when I'm needed. But when that light hits the sky, it's not just a call. It's a warning. To them.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the Gotham Chronicles Beyond the Bat Signal. I am your host, Domenic Iannicca. Join me as we dive into the depths of Batman's lore, dissecting the Rogues Gallery, and going deep into the Batcave and uncovering the stories and mysteries of our iconic vigilante known as the Dark Knight. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for each and every single one of you that listen each week. If you have not rated and reviewed the show, please do so and subscribe, as it goes a long way and helps spread the word. With that being said, this is episode 5, where we are going to discuss the new Joker Folie trailer, which, mind blown. And also, I've been watching through Vice, Icons Unearthed, Batman, episodes 1 and 2. So we're going to do a quick recap as to things I had no idea about. I'm not sure about you, but it really covers the process of getting Batman 89 up and going and what happened, because there's a lot of stories that were just totally uncovered and I think many of us did not know about. Now, with that being said, let's start with that Joker Folie trailer. I was one where I was completely at peace back in 2019 thinking, no, we do not need another Joker sequel. And then when they were talking about, like, you know, that there's a potential that they wanted to come up with another sequel, I'm like, oh no. Like, you know, it was kind of left to the imagination as to what happened with Joker, what was real, what was not. So if you have watched that film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a very heavy film. It's not like I've revisited it multiple times. I think probably 3 times in total. Just because even though it is such an incredible film, it is heavy, it's dark, and it doesn't make you feel good. That said, there's no shying away with the level of acting and the type of performance that was done by Joaquin Phoenix, Todd Phillips, the way he wrote, directed that film. I mean, so good. Now, getting to the trailer, I don't even know where to really begin. I think the first thing that comes to mind is all the artistic shots. Like, this is not just like a superhero film whatsoever. This is first and foremost, a artistic film that was done by highly talented actors and directors. One of the first shots taken is where it looks like Arthur Fleck is kind of being released, and then you get like this above shot where there's 4 umbrellas: orange, red, blue, and yellow. Kind of reminiscent of the color palette that we saw back in the first Joker, and kind of looks like it's going to be the same type of palette that we're going to experience in Joker 2. He's walking out of jail, and they have that above shot angle. It just looks so incredible, where it's like so rainy. And then I just think that, you know, you got Todd Phillips, a guy who, you know, he made the Hangover films, Due Date, Old School. Like, you know, you go back to 2004, correct me if I'm wrong, where he made Old School, and I quote that movie to this day. Love it. But if you were to tell me, I want to say it was 16, 17-year-old self, that, yeah, he's going to make an Oscar-worthy film, and it's going to be serious. It's not going to be a comedy by any means. It's going to be on Joker. I would have laughed and said there's no chance. Todd Phillips is incredibly talented. I just didn't realize how talented. But talk about diverse, and now he's coming out with, now we're gonna get into like whether it's a musical or not, but the fact that he came up with the Joker 2 idea, and I would say the majority of the audience would be like, nope, just leave it at 1. We're good. Let's not touch it. But you had Joaquin sign on for this, which means he bought in. And clearly Todd Phillips bought in. I mean, if he's like going to say, well, okay, I'm going to make a film and this is what it's going to be, I don't think he's just going to do it just for the money. I think it was, I mean, yeah, probably he's getting paid $20 million. So I think part of it is the money, but you know, he had to come up with an idea, and I don't think he's just going to do a crappy film, and neither would Joaquin Phoenix. And to add to that, Lady Gaga. You got 3 huge names that has signed on to this project. Now, with this trailer, they created a tone that was, after watching the minute and 30 seconds of this, like, this was the film I didn't think we needed at all, but now it is an absolute must. And I can't wait for October 4th to come around and we get to just watch this film. I remember watching the first one and I had no clue what to expect. I remember I was going with a couple of good friends of mine to the movie theater and just walked out blown away. I felt like I was sitting on my chair or my couch with my wife, and we just kind of looked at each other in awe about, like, well, Sharpie this into our calendar, October 4th, we're going to watch this film. And that's exactly what the trailer did. A trailer is supposed to excite you, and it did just that. And this has to be one of the most anticipated films of the year. It seems like Warner Brothers does love that October release date, especially with Batman being released, or the Batman being released next year, or no, not 2025, 2026, but securing also the October time slot. Now, my reaction to this, as I'm sure many others, is it was blown away. The level of direction and shots that were taken. Yes, I mentioned the umbrella. The other one that completely stuck out to me was that final shot of the trailer where Lady Gaga's character Harley just draws a smile with the lipstick on the glass, and then Arthur Fleck lines up his smile exactly where the lipstick is, and boom, money shot. Like, so genius. And yet, like, how did no one think of this before? You know what I mean? So simple, but you're like, perfect. That was absolutely perfect. Genius by Todd Phillips. And then there was a couple of others, right? Like, you see a lot of what's transpired in the first film into the second film. There's a lot of uncertain, like, as to what's real, what's not. It seems like Arthur Fleck's character is still imagining many things. One of them being, you know, it looked like it was Joker and Harley Quinn dancing at some sort of, like, on a stage in a concert, dressed up, obviously, with their makeups, their hair all done, and then immediately transitions into them still dancing, but it is utter chaos on the streets. And they're just twisting, turning, dancing, and loving life with fire in the background. Who knows what is going on? That's just one. And then there was another cool one that I thought, where if you kind of slow it down, you'll see that there is like a long aisle. Joker was dressed in a tuxedo, nice white suit. And then you see the back of Harley Quinn walking down that aisle. And you got to imagine, like, you know, is that real? Is that, like, is Arthur Fleck imagining all this? And again, it makes it very unknown as to, you got people already guessing and unsure. I mean, people are talking clearly as to, you know, where's this direction going? And then we see a lot of similarities between Harley Quinn and Joker, where one of them is like, that famous Joker kick. Reminds me of Elaine from Seinfeld, the way she dances. But they're both on the steps, and Harley is doing one big kick at this, and simultaneously with Arthur Fleck's character, or Arthur Fleck, and and then the other one was, she's got, it looks like blood, and she just smears the big smile onto her face, and another is where she's doing the makeup, and it's almost identical to how Joker does it, where it's just above the eyes. A lot of similarities. I don't know. I think, Lady Gaga, I don't even think she was nominated. Or was she nominated for A Star Is Born? She definitely didn't win the Oscar, and I just thought that was robbery, because I think she did an incredible job. And maybe she gets that recognition now. She must, right? That trailer was one of the biggest trailers that Warner Brothers had since Barbie. I think it was the biggest trailer since Barbie's trailer got released. And rightfully so. This is a rated R film. I wasn't sure if this would hit $1 billion. Actually, $1 billion, 7, yeah, around there. Anyway, it hit $1 billion. And I wasn't sure if this second film would hit it. And after seeing this trailer, I am confident it's going to hit $1 billion. It has to. There was a lot of chatter online. There was a lot of chatter amongst podcasters. We're all wowed by it, and I don't think that there was one negative comment about this trailer, none whatsoever. Even the way the music was placed. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was. So the song was "What the World Needs Now Is Love." And the version was of Tom Jones. So I just actually played it on my Apple Music, and so catchy. But even watching the trailer, you're like, wow, this is so fitting. Now, I wanted to transition, and I was talking to my wife. I'm like, how do you feel about musicals? And she's not a big fan of musicals, with the exception of a couple films. And I'm the same way. However, Todd Phillips makes an excellent point when he's referring to, well, is this film a musical? Is it? So he kind of addressed the rumors, because we all were under the impression that, yeah, this film's going to be a musical, which when I first heard it, I was like, okay, that's different, but I'm intrigued, and you got me hooked already. So for a guy who doesn't like musicals, but it's about the Joker, and then you want to do something different, well, this is completely different. I've been ranting about how we need serious directors to be directing these superhero films, and if you want something different, yes, we want the traditional comic book ones for the most part, but then you want something where it's a good director just directs a film and creates their own vision, and basically you're tossing them the keys and saying, run with it. Now, Todd Phillips, he addressed it, talking about the rumors of Folie à Deux being a musical. His thing was, he was saying, listen, Arthur Fleck is weird, he's an aloof, but he has music in him. He has grace, said Phillips. That informed a lot of the dancing in the film. I didn't think that it needed to be a big step here. It's different, but I still think it will make sense when you see it. So Todd Phillips also continues. He said, we've really never talked about it like that, meaning the film being a musical. But he continues and he says, I like to say it's a film where music is an essential element. He replied to Entertainment Weekly. He continues by saying, to me, that doesn't veer too far from the first film. He assured fans that it will all make sense when they watch the film. And it's true, right? Arthur Fleck, you can kind of tell he likes music. He listens to it. He has it in his background. Even oh man, what's the song called? I always think of a hockey game. That's it. Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter. That's the one thing I remember where he's coming down the steps. So yeah, it plays an essential element. I mean, I can think of a couple of movies where I truly enjoyed, even the like why I don't know why Disney's coming to my head, but like music does play an essential element as to a lot of these films, especially Disney. One of which is being like The Lion King, right? Totally different tone, by the way. I mean, we're talking about a kids movie versus a rated R film. But I feel like that the way they incorporated a lot of these songs, especially with Joker, I think it's going to be. I'm not going to question Todd Phillips. I think, like, yeah, you want to do a musical? I'm in. Watching that trailer, yeah, 100%. Take my money. We're going to go watch it for sure. Guarantee once, possibly twice. Who knows? And it's so smart, right? Like, it's right around Halloween time, too, not to mention. And it's got that type of, like, creepy, eerie tone. Anyway, I love the trailer. Absolutely. I think the way that they used the music, I think that the way that they used and incorporated Harley Quinn, like they gave us all a little taste about each of them. The only thing where I've seen where people were not too keen on was, it's not going to be comic books accurate. I think people don't care. I think, you had a general audience go and watch Joker 1. People don't care if Harley Quinn is not going to be comic accurate. I mean, as for many of the hardcore fans, we know that this is more of an Elseworlds, Black Label kind of story, right? It's not a traditional Joker story. This is like he still leaves his identity very unknown, multiple choice kind of thing, as to like take a wild guess as to how he got it, right? Like, and that's the whole film from the first Joker. And same thing here. So Harley Quinn doesn't look like she's going to be a doctor or psychologist that's going to be supporting Joker. None whatsoever. It looks like she's a patient in Arkham. Totally different from her origin. So again, that's kind of what I expected, though. I'm not wanting something that is just right from the page of a comic book. I don't expect that. From the DCU movies, I will expect that, but this, no. I'm kind of like, show me your different version, man. Give it to me. Like, I'm curious as to what we get, and I'm all for it. That said, there are still traditional elements. Joker still has like the purple. He still has like that tux look. With Harley, she has the red, as you can see with the red blazer, the blonde hair, and she is part of Joker. I think, what? Yeah, we're in. I love it. I'm good not to see another trailer, though. I'm good for just TV spots. Don't show me anything else. I want to go in blindfolded as to like what is going on and just kind of sit in the seat and then watch and enjoy the show. But yeah, I'm definitely good with just this one trailer. Now, that said, I wanted to transition into Icons Unearthed, episodes 1 and 2 of Batman. Now, this is aired through Vice. You can also find it on YouTube, where I was also able to watch this. You can, if you just quickly search Icons Unearthed Batman, they have episodes 1 to 4, I believe. But I'm just going to talk about the first two, as I thought it was extremely intriguing. I'm sure many of us, if not, definitely take a look to the special features that the Batman 89 covers, because this is what the first two episodes are about. It's about how Batman gets going, that film, thanks to Michael Uslan, and, what it took to get made, that first Batman film. And it was tonally different. So, with that said, let's get into Icons Unearthed Batman.
Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
So my initial reaction to watching the first two episodes was a lot of, I didn't know that. It had a lot of focus actually on Sean Young, who was the original Vicky Vale. And as it is pretty well known, is that she fell off a horse, broke her collarbone, and then was pretty much immediately replaced by Kim Basinger to be the new Vicky Vale. Now, let's start from the beginning. So, Batman 1966 came out with Adam West and Burt Young and Michael Uslan at a very young age was watching this, and he was reading comic books at the time. And he was just like, I'm watching this and they're making a complete mockery as to what Batman is. This isn't a superhero movie at all, or a superhero show at all. It's a joke. It literally, they're mocking it. It's a comedy. And he did not like the tone as to what Batman was. I'm sure many of us remember 1966, that Batman TV series, very fondly. It's probably one of the first Batman shows we have all watched. I remember watching it with my dad all the time. And whenever it was on, I loved it. And then you go back and you're like, I can't believe that this is something that they actually released and took so seriously. But you know what? As a kid, I absolutely loved it. And I still look back at it and I just like, I do enjoy it. There's times where I just throw it on the TV, and for as cheesy as it is, that is completely fine with me because that was a show that was for that time and I didn't mind it. Now, Michael Uslan wanted to have a different tone as to how Batman would be depicted, and rightfully so, and he wanted to have this character be taken more seriously. So I believe it was in 1979, this kid named Michael Uslan went ahead and bought the rights to Batman. It was like, it was not just the rights, it was the film rights to Batman from DC Comics. So, as it is really well noted, he thought it was the 1966 series was super campy, and it was just a joke to him, and to many others. People looked at it as a comedy. Not only that, when studio executives, like the name was brought up of Batman, studio executives thought of Batman as it was a joke. It was kid oriented. It was directed towards little kids, as the 66 series was. And Uslan wanted a completely different tone. So he bought the film rights, and he wanted a film to resemble the one that was in the comics. Now, at that time, Neil Adams took over with Denny O'Neil, and it was a much different tone, a darker tone. And Uslan got the film rights, and then he wanted to have his vision on the big screen. And he made numerous pitches of Batman being on the silver screen and faced several rejections along the way. He was told, like, you're crazy. This will not work. This is the stupidest idea. He actually repeats it in episode 1 and 2 quite frequently as this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And if you follow Batman on film, he's been on there quite a few times, and he will share his story. There's even a book about it. If you go on Hoopla, I'm pretty sure that there's an audio book on there. That is a great app. Hoopla is the app. Highly recommend. You can find all sorts of Batman comics and, audio books. One of them being, I think it's with Michael Uslan. And anyway, he was persistent. He believed that, there was the potential to have a serious tone, a more mature tone, and a cinematic take on The Dark Knight. So eventually, his persistence paid off, and he was able to be teamed up. Warner Brothers looked at this and they're like, okay, we'll give you a chance. They went through a couple of directors until they finally landed on a young up-and-coming director named Tim Burton. So at that time, Tim Burton, he got his opportunity by executives looking at a short film that Tim Burton gave to Warner Brothers. They're like, yeah, listen, we're going to sign you to a guarantee 3 films that you get to make with us, which is unheard of because all he did was just make a small, short little film. But they loved his vision at that time. And so Tim Burton was signed on to be the director for the new Batman film. And then the producers were Peter Gruber and John Peters, who would also help bring Batman to the silver screen. So interesting to note that John Peters and Tim Burton did not get along and see eye to eye. I've heard this, but it wasn't as in depth or in detail as it was in episode 1 and 2, where you come to learn. Now, there was several issues when you're trying to produce this film, right? So it's called production hell, right? Where you're trying to figure out, like, okay, well, who are some of these actors going to be? Who's going to be in this film? Who's going to help create the setting? Like, they couldn't make it in New York City. They said that, we're going to make Gotham City in England, which I know Tim Burton was just a little uncomfortable with because a lot of his people were situated in the United States. So, all his people, that he had to go there in England where he was completely unfamiliar and recreate Gotham City. So when they created Gotham City, this was at Pinewood Studios, owned by WB, Warner Brothers, and they created it literally from complete scratch. They created a city at Pinewood Studios from scratch. And, Tim Burton didn't really know the workers. He had a vision. And he put complete trust into hoping that this is going to turn out exactly the way it's going to. There were a couple of issues, which is common, where doors were not aligned properly. But for the most part, they recreated a grungy city that just kind of was like, it was almost as if like it was New York City if it was completely neglected. And I thought that they did an amazing job as to the look and feel to what Gotham could feel like or would feel like. And obviously, like, the tone kind of shifted. You can kind of tell between Batman 89 and then Batman Returns how the city kind of shows different aspects of Gotham City. Tonally, I prefer the first one with Keaton and Nicholson. But with that said, they filmed it at Pinewood Studios, which was interesting. And then, in the extras, they don't always showcase as to what didn't work, but more so like what did work. Here, it's a lot of what kind of went wrong. And I'm kind of glad that they did. When it came to the casting, Michael Keaton was casted as Batman, who Tim Burton was obviously very familiar with. And, there was names that were mentioned before him, such as Chevy Chase, which a lot of you guys would probably know from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, or Bill Murray. All nice, viable choices. But Tim Burton was dead set on Michael Keaton, where people were up in arms because there was a complete blowback from fans, newspapers, to know that he was going to be the one that was going to be Batman. They're like, this guy does comedies. He's Mr. Mom, and now he's going to be taking on a serious character like Batman. Even Michael Easton was like, oh, man. He's like, I wanted a serious film with a dark Batman, and here we are with Mr. Mom being Batman. And, like, it was even said in that, I think it was part 1 of that, or the episode 1, where they're like, if there was social media, no way that Michael Keaton gets selected. Nobody wanted Michael Keaton as Batman. He was playing silly roles, right? Like he was playing comedies. Even Sean Young went on to say he was not tall, not exceptionally good looking. But Turton said, this story has to be about Bruce Wayne, not Batman. Fun note is Michael Uslan, in one of those 2 episodes, actually gave a bunch of comics, Detective Comics 27 being one. The other one was The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. And said, read this, because Tim Burton wasn't really too familiar with Batman. However, you had Michael Uslan there, who was a historian for Batman comics, said, read these. This is the type of tone I'm looking for. So when Tim Burton came back, he said, this movie cannot be about Batman. It has to be about Bruce Wayne. And, they did select an excellent actor. Very much like Robert Pattinson in The Batman, most recent movie. A lot of acting was done with the eyes. Same thing with Michael Keaton. If you look at even how his eyebrows are, the look, his eyes, the stares, just absolutely serious. And they wanted someone exactly like that. And Tim Burton was spot on, right? No, Michael Keaton was not absolutely jacked. He wasn't even ripped. Arguably, out of the Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney, Val Kilmer is probably the most fit Batman between those 4 films. But that's not what they were looking for. Speaking of fitness, Michael Keaton did start working out, and Jack Nicholson is looking at Michael Keaton saying, like, man, what are you doing? Why are you working out? Let the suit do all the work. And needless to say, it was like, he needed that space and that flexibility within the suit to actually do certain movements. Now, with Joker, there was talk of Robin Williams, God rest his soul, being the Joker, which I could have seen. However, it was Michael Uslan who saw a picture of Jack Nicholson. He had several films under his belt, like The Shining, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he played like a psychopath. And anyway, he saw Jack Nicholson's picture in the newspaper, gets some white out, starts painting his face, used some lipstick on the lips. Michael Uslan goes, this is it. This is the Joker. Brings it to Peters and Goober, who had a very strong relationship with Nicholson. Worked out a deal, and lo and behold, you have Jack Nicholson starring as the Joker. Now, he didn't obviously come for free. There was a huge price to pay. Everybody's got a price, as the $1 Million Man would say. Jack Nicholson, he got paid $6 million for the film, plus a portion of the franchise based on how much the film made, right? So, which he was still getting paid handsomely for. It was a really good deal for Jack Nicholson. I thought anyway, and I think many others do. And that was in terms of how he negotiated. And not only that, it was on his terms, how many hours he can film per day. And he was expensive, right? There was also incentives into like, well, okay, like I can't miss any Laker games. None at all, which I thought was fascinating, and it really did work around his schedule. Right? When they discussed this in, I think it was episode 2, when they were trying to formulate the look of the Joker, right? They had to try to get him ready under 2 hours, that face. And one of them is like, because of how much they're getting paid, it had to be 10 hours, and they had to get him ready to go and start filming immediately. And not only that, it was told by people doing the makeup and reconstructing Jack's face that they had to make sure that they are showing Jack Nicholson. Like, you cannot hide his face like you kind of do with Colin Farrell. Like, people need to know that this is Jack Nicholson playing the Joker, which I thought was fairly interesting. So they had to incorporate, one, factor in Jack Nicholson's face, make sure that people can recognize that it is Jack Nicholson. Two, if you recall from the movie, Batman was shot by the Joker, and it ricocheted off Batman's gauntlet back into Joker's face, and then he goes into that huge vat of chemicals. So you have to know that it's like, okay, well, he's going to have facial reconstruction based on the bullet going through his face, and then he's going into the chemicals that acts as chemicals. So that was what factored into how to make Jack Nicholson into the Joker. So one of the ways to kind of put like a perma smile on Jack Nicholson's face is it was, to put a dental piece. So it would kind of open up his smile. And what they said to him, meaning the guy who was creating this mouthpiece, was out of your mind. Like, you do that, you're going to completely change the way Jack Nicholson smiles and deform his teeth. Or do you want to be responsible for that? And he was like, no chance. So he took a different approach. He created it was more of a prosthetic. So, they have Jack Nicholson where it's like, okay, let's take a prosthetic of when you're not smiling and when you're smiling. And then what they did was they were able to put that onto his face, and they had, I think there was like 4 or 5 prosthetics that were lined up, and they got Jack Nicholson to be like, this is your call. Which one do you want? And he was able to go ahead and choose. And what we got was what Jack Nicholson actually chose, which I thought was brilliant. In terms of look and comic accurate, to me, Jack Nicholson was it. If you look at Strange Apparitions, that Batman story, that's the one I think of right off the bat. Now, we got Joker, who the creation, and then there was Batman. There was obviously some difficulty when it came to creating the bat suit, as many of us know, like the whole turning of the head. So Bruce Wayne / Michael Keaton, he had to adjust. Instead of just regularly turning his head like normal people would, he had to kind of turn and shift his entire body right, left, and then in order to look up, like a lot of us will just tilt our head backwards. Well, he had to tilt his whole body backwards in order to look up. But that was just, it almost became like signature to this point. Now, if you look at the Flash movie most recently, where Michael Keaton was in, they wanted to stay true to his old batsuit. They even kind of make fun of when one of the, I think it was the Multiverse Flash, where he's turning his head and he's like, you can see the mask pulling back. But yeah, there were some issues even with the batsuit and making sure that it all kind of stays together, and the look of it, even when he was going into the Batmobile, because the ears were so tall. To go into the Batmobile, they actually had to cut the ears off in order for him to fit into the Batmobile. Pretty interesting stuff. Speaking of the Batmobile, one thing that they allude to, which I don't think many of us knew, were the types of issues that arose when it came to the creation of the Batmobile. Probably one of the my favorite design. So it had trouble turning around corners. So it's like, you're going straight, and it's great. Then when you try to turn a corner, well, yeah, that wasn't happening, right? It had a huge difficulty. And it wasn't like they can just kind of quickly test, because filming already began, and, this was costing money. So they had to hire professional drivers in order to drive this Batmobile, and along the way that there was also some adjustments. One of them was also about how is Batman going to get into the car. So they looked at regular doors where they can just kind of swing open, and that was not practical. Another one was kind of having like the Back to the Future doors, or even Lamborghini, where they kind of just like swing open wide. And again, the director thought, well, you know what? That looks kind of a little clunky. And then it was the art director from the film who's like, well, what if, the hood just kind of slides open and goes forward? And that was the most practical way, which I think many of us actually love that little feature. And then there was also the design of the Batmobile. So I always think Corvette. Whenever I see a Batmobile, I always think Corvette. And the other one is Lamborghini. And sure enough, that's actually where the design was kind of derived from when designing the Batmobile. So some feedback with this Batmobile. They're like, listen, we need to make it a bit more brutal. Yes, it's a sports car, but we need to make this like mean and tough. So I think he got the idea from what was called one of the fastest cars. It was called the Green Monster, if I'm not mistaken. It just looked like a rocket. So when you look at the Batmobile dead set in the middle, it actually looks like a little rocket. And then obviously there's like a huge, there's a flame that comes out from the back, which, is so common with the Batmobile. But, yeah, and that's kind of how and then he added the bat fins. Originally, there was even 2 cockpits on either side. But, it looked kind of stupid for him. He was saying, well, you know what? Why would Vicky Vale and Batman have a conversation in the Batmobile, but there's 2 cockpits on either side and a major rocket in the middle between them two? Made no sense. So he had to kind of slim it down and make it a bit more compact. And what we got was, well, simple. It was like, a 2-seater Batmobile with the front that kind of just slides down, and they're able to either hop in and out of the car, no problems, done. Which I thought was legendary, and I absolutely love it. According to the documentary, it doesn't go extremely fast, which is kind of disappointing, but man, do they make it look like it's extremely fast. Just the way, I think it was the Descent to Mystery, where the Batmobile is just cutting through that forest at the middle of the night with Batman and Vicky Vale just flying, and then you have that music on in the background. No word of a lie, I will totally play this song, Descent into Mystery, from time to time. Especially when it's at nighttime, you're cutting through leaves, and I love it when it's just like, you go through like a pile of leaves and then you just see them flying everywhere. You truly feel like you're in a sports car. Now, with that said, there was the big thing with Sean Young, where she wasn't too well liked from people like Jack Nicholson. This is from her perspective. And, it was really quick for, as soon as she got the broken collarbone, like it wasn't just that where they quickly moved on from her. She noticed that her lines were slowly dwindling as each table read was happening. She was just like, apparently, according to the guy who played Alexander Knox, he was saying like, she got into a monotone and she was noticing how her lines were slowly just piecing away, and she lost all motivation. But she was doing things that was kind of upsetting the actors, not taking things seriously. The other thing was like, even when Jack Nicholson was she was taking pictures of Jack Nicholson when he was passed out, falling asleep on a nap. Like, she just, certain things. The only one that she really did get along with was Alexander Knox. For the love of him, I'm not sure who plays him. I can't remember. It'll come to me in a second. But she got along great with him. But I think it just was off-putting for guys like Jack Nicholson, were just, taking pictures. And even she says, I don't think Jack liked me too much. And she even says that, she doesn't think that Michael Keaton liked her too much. But she also said that, he took his role pretty serious, and he is a pretty serious guy. Yes, he's funny, but, when he's acting and he's on set, he's pretty serious, which rightfully so. I mean, I think a lot of people, they're there to do a job, and it makes sense. But as soon as because she shared that she was actually terrified of horses, and she was willing to do a scene near the end where, she was going to say, like, what, like, I'll ride this horse, but I am absolutely terrified. But she agreed to do it, and she was practicing, and she went forward, and I guess one day where she was rehearsing with a horse, rather than just saying, I'll just walk with it, nope, she went on, faced her fears, and then she fell and was severely injured. She was going to be out for 8 months, and they just started filming. And they're like, well, sorry, but no, like, we need to start filming, and we're going to move forward without you. So John Peters, it was shared that they needed to look for a new Vicky Vale. And one of the names that was mentioned was Michelle Pfeiffer. And Michael Keaton had some marital issues. I think that there was like a little bit of a fling between him and Michelle Pfeiffer, and he just said, absolutely not. We are not having Michelle Pfeiffer play Vicky Vale here. Like, no way. I'm trying to repair my marriage, and this is something I will nix. No chance. Which I thought was news to me. So then John Peters is like, well, okay, let's get Kim Basinger. And what was shared was that he actually had a little bit of a crush on her, and it was perfect. So they brought Kim Basinger in, who I thought did a wonderful job being Vicky Vale, and she took the role. And a couple of things about her, they didn't share too much, but one thing was in terms of fashion choices. She pretty much chose every dress, everything that she wore, with the exception of one outfit. I think it was where she was taking pictures of where Bruce Wayne laid the roses. But anything else, all the dresses, she chose, which I thought was interesting. She just kind of went ahead and said, no, I disagree with your choices. I'm going to choose my own attire. And then the other thing was her and John Peters were out one night, and they didn't like the ending in the third act of how the Batman was going to end. And apparently Vicky Vale was supposed to die in this film. And they said, well, okay, let's nix this and let's rewrite the ending. And sure enough, John Peters goes behind Tim Burton's back, rewrites the ending. And, there was a lot of things that were slowly kind of breaking away between John Peters and Tim Burton. And this was just another thing that, kind of upset Tim Burton, which was, rewriting the ending of this film. And personally, I did not mind it whatsoever. Vicky Vale lives at the end. And, Vicky Vale was able to, but it was John Peters and Kim Basinger who kind of helped recreate the ending of that Batman film. Not only that, John Peters went ahead, commissioned, and said, you know what, that big bell tower that we see at the end of the film, well, he paid $100,000, commissioned it, and said that this is where the ending is going to be. And this was, again, all done behind Tim Burton's back. So, yeah, this is how it got rewritten. I absolutely loved how the ending was. I thought it was very satisfying. I was like, for a Batman fan, there was a nice ending, and we were able to move forward. Another part of the script that was also changed was Alexander Knox was actually supposed to die. And then, upon revising, he lives, which I thought was great. I mean, I would have loved to see Knox in future films. He was also the director of, I really got to find out what his name was, but while I'm talking, I'll search it. So he was the director, the one who was commentating throughout the entire documentary, and he did an excellent job. There's his name, Robert Wall, who played Alexander Knox. But he actually shared something that was interesting. The one great thing about Tim Burton was a lot of the lines in there was improvised. So he was saying things like, if you notice a lot of the lines that Alexander Knox says, like 6 is good, or because he is a comedian, he's got comedic chops, and you can kind of tell he was like the comedic relief throughout the film. And a lot of his comments and improvisation was near the end of scenes. Like certain things that he would just throw in where it's like, you can't really do it in the middle of a scene and get away with it. And speaking improvisation, I thought Jack Nicholson, the lines that he was coming up with, and like in retrospect, you're like, wow, like, who would come up with this? Well, yeah, Jack Nicholson would. This town needs an enema. Or another one of his lines that was in Batman 89 was, never rub another man's rhubarb. I always die at that. Or, I am of the mind that makes some mookie. I don't know. I find them hilarious. Like, it's like, where do you come up with this? Now, on the topic of Jack Nicholson, there was actually a falling out between him and John Peters. One cool thing that Jack Nicholson did was he got jackets for the whole cast and crew for, I guess it was like Joker bomber jackets. Later did we learn that it was going to be split between him and John Peters. Now, Jack, covered the cost, and he was waiting for John Peters to cover the other half, and he wasn't paying. So Jack Nicholson was obviously upset, and they had a huge falling out for that. Man, I love those bomber jackets. Oh, they're so cool. And so you think about that, and you're like, oh, interesting. What a character guy. Like, John Peters, yeah, they produced some good, him and Goober produced some nice movies, but, in terms of characteristics going behind people's back, the way it was described, I can't recall who, but John Peters was more in the mindset of a child, which is unfortunate. Now, that said, you look at, I think every single one of us, I think that has to be the number one film that we all watch, and you can replay on the background nonstop and just enjoy from beginning to end. Out of especially the 4 films, 2 Burton, 2 Schumacher, that's probably my favorite. And it's probably in my top 5 Batman movies of all time. I don't know. We should do a top 10 list. But, the one thing was, and this is like the last thing that they shared throughout the first 2 episodes, was Tim Burton and the phone, and how slowly, there was that slow falling out, was John Peters wanted Prince to help push this movie, so create his own album. Tim Burton had a fantastic relationship with Danny Elfman, and listen, that guy, that whole soundtrack from Prince, phenomenal. The Party Man, not even played at my wedding, as one of the songs in the background, which I thought was fantastic. And if you ever watch, what's the one with the Chicago Bulls, Last Dance, with Michael Jordan, they even play that Party Man song in the background as well. It's legendary. And how do you not like Prince? But, for Tim Burton, he just didn't think it fit the vibe of the film. He liked Danny Elfman's score, and, obviously, he had to inject a couple of Prince songs throughout the movie, which I thought was very fitting, especially where they're at that little restaurant. Vicky Vale goes to meet Joker. Well, at least she thinks she's meeting Bruce Wayne, but really it's the Joker. And, they have that Party Man song going. And, I thought that the way... Anyway, so Tim Burton didn't really like how, John Peters went ahead, included even a different soundtrack. It's like, this is not my vision. This is not what I signed up for. And later we'll see that, when they go on to make Batman Returns, Tim Burton want absolute full control with no one interjecting, and he want full control of those movies. But that brings us to the end of episodes 1 and 2 for Icons Unearthed Batman. I thought the way it was done, it's definitely worth a watch. There's a lot of parts I guaranteed missed, little details that I think every Batman fan should watch and enjoy. You can definitely find it on YouTube. I'll post it on X/Twitter to share. Now, with that being said, that brings us right to the end of this podcast, episode 5. And I'm going to continue with Icons Unearthed. I'm going to watch episodes 3 and 4, and then we can break it down, discuss. I'm sure that there's a lot of things I'm going to learn, definitely things that you're going to learn, and join me for the ride. I know that there's a couple of exciting episodes that I'm going to be discussing and covering that I'm actually really pumped to share with you guys. Now, with that being said, where can you find me? So you can find me on Twitter/X at Beyond Bat Signal. If you want to contact me with any questions, comments, feel free to email me at beyondthebatsignal@gmail.com. And rate and review the show. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Audible. I don't even know. But definitely those, and iHeartMusic. It's in the episode description. Feel free. Listen, when you rate and review the show, it helps spread the word. Now, thank every single one of you for taking the time to listen, tune in. Honestly, you have no idea how I appreciate it. This is a joy project of mine. I love Batman, and I'm sure as you do too. Now, with that being said, stay vigilant. Look for that signal to hit the sky. But until then, this is Beyond the Bat Signal, signing off.
We've received a letter from Batman this morning. Please inform the citizens of Gotham that Gotham City has earned the rest from crime. But if the forces of evil should rise again to cast a shadow on the heart of the city, call me.
Question. How do we call him?
He gave us a signal.